I get it, I was wrong. There was one lens that I should have had in my kit and I thought, oh, well, I've got a whole bunch of other lenses. Let's just add a whole bunch of adjustments on here so I can do what that lens does, but not as good. And that's what we have to talk about today, and this is the reason why you should have this particular lens, and we will discuss why it is extremely important to have this type of lens. What's going on, my friends? I hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. And if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. That would be obviously amazing. I do a whole bunch of filmmaking stuff, photography, all those kind of things. Today, we have to talk about these macro lenses because these ones are very significant and extremely useful in your kit. But first of all, let's talk about the thing that I've been doing for literally like 5 years to get away from getting myself a macro lens, and that is using these things, diopters or close-up filters. These things essentially are just magnifying glasses that you literally put on the front of your lens, your current lens, any lens, and you'll be able to film a lot closer. Now, I got these specifically for anamorphic lenses because typically anamorphic lenses can only film, maybe 80 centimeters away, so it's not really close and you can't get really nice close-ups with anamorphic lenses. So diopters or close-up filters will really help with that. But before using close-up filters, this is what I used. These are essentially extension tubes. Now, you've probably heard of these things. You can literally get these ones for autofocus lenses because they have the contact pins on the front or back, and you can obviously get them for your mount. Now, essentially these go on the camera mount and then you put your lens on top of here, so it changes that flange distance at the back, which essentially is going to change that focal point, and this is how you're able to get some nice close macro shots. But unfortunately, they're not the greatest, they're not weather sealed, and they just cause a whole bunch of other problems, and you're trying to fix one little solution by buying a whole bunch of cheap tools and trying to get that same look. So when it comes to macro lenses, we have to talk about the image quality because you are getting really close, and you obviously want a really nice sharp lens because most of the time if you are filming macro, you want nice tack sharp. So what's the image quality like on both of these new lenses? Now, we're taking a look at the 75mm, and at T2.8, I just don't know if I've said this about any other lens, but these are actually perfectly sharp in the center and the corners. And then you stop it down to T4, T5.6, and then obviously at T22, diffraction does start to kick in. It gets a little bit soft, less contrast, but incredibly sharp throughout this whole lens, which is amazing. And then you go to 100mm, it's literally exactly the same. They're incredibly sharp in the center and in the corners at T2.8, stopping it down all the way to T22. Once again, diffraction starts to kick in at the end. But wow, this is extremely important when it comes to macro lenses because you're going to get some incredibly sharp images. And being sharp with the macro lens is actually quite important because if you are trying to get really close to a subject, you're going to capture extreme details, and you need that sharpness to really show off those details. Let's say, for instance, you're trying to get an eyeball and the lens is a little bit soft. That's not going to be a good thing because you want to be able to see absolutely everything in that eye and see all the details there. But one of the things with we have to talk about macro lenses is depth of field, and this is a very big thing because what happens with macro lenses, if you try and shoot wide open at say T2.8, your depth of field is extremely shallow because you are super close to your subject. And what you'll find you'll have to do is stopping down the lens to maybe T5.6, T8 to at least increase that depth of field to give you a little bit more in focus. And having a lens super sharp at T2.8 kind of doesn't really matter because you will be stopping it down. But if you are using these lenses normally and it's nice and sharp, then that's still amazing because it's still relative to what you're actually utilizing these lenses for. If they're going to be really close-up macro shots, if they're going to be extreme close-up macro shots, or just going to be standard close-up shots. So realistically, if we are thinking about these as a macro lens, it's extremely important that they are this sharp. Now, before we get into the rest of the image quality, we have to talk about the magnification ratio because the 100mm actually has a 0.66 magnification, which is amazing, whereas the 70mm has a 1:1 readout when it comes to magnification. So this is still technically a macro lens, but this one actually gets you that little bit further, which is amazing on that 100mm. Now, they all have really nice solid metal designs. At the front here, you actually have a 95mm front lip, so you can actually clamp on matte boxes, which is amazing, especially for me because I use matte boxes all the time. And all the lenses have a lens mount as well. So if you do actually want to protect your camera lens mount, definitely use that lens support. Now, one major thing is that they do come in that PL mount, which is really good, especially when it comes to cinematographers, because you can literally get a PL mount for almost any camera and adapt it to any camera. And I do suggest if you buy these, buy PL mount, because you can use them for so many other different cameras, or you can actually sell them off and, you know, someone in the RF system can actually utilize it, which is amazing. So the biggest reason why I always recommend PL, because it's a really tough mount. Ari designed it. It's called positive lock. So essentially you just slot it in and then you rotate this ring and it locks in. Ari designed it to be extremely rugged, and you're able to put any sort of cinema lens on there and not worry about your actual lens mount breaking. Now, other than the PL mount, you can also get the EF mount as well. Now, they both have a 200-degree focus ring, which is quite nice, front filtered thread of 88mm, and here are the weights of the lenses depending on the mount on the screen right now. And also with the price, they're currently at $8.99 US each. Now, chromatic aberration isn't necessarily a thing that a lot of people like, because purple and green fringing on edges is not appealing to some. But what is the chromatic aberration like on these lenses? So if we were to look at longitudinal chromatic aberrations between the 75mm and the 100mm at T2.8, well, there's pretty much none. And if you do stop it down a little bit to maybe T4, then it's absolutely clean, which is really important for macro shots. So if you are using these lenses for photography, I mean, focus breathing isn't going to be an issue, but they are kind of designed specifically for video users. So what is the focus breathing going to be like? Because if you do tend to do a little bit of focus pulls, it could be distracting for some. I know some people like focus breathing, but it really depends on the individual. But what do we have with these lenses? Now, looking at this, there does seem to be a little bit more focus breathing when it comes to the 75mm as opposed to the 100. It doesn't seem to focus breathe as much, so you do have to take this into consideration. But generally, macro shots, you're not really pulling from a far distance. So when it comes to flaring, this could be an extremely important thing, because if you are nice and close, you don't want the image to wash out. So what do we have when it comes to flaring artifacts? Looking at the flaring at the 75mm, it's pretty clean. Obviously, if you do get to some certain edges, you do see a little bit of flaring artifacts, but it's not too bad. But if we go to the 100mm, this is where things change a little bit. It does seem to wash out at a certain angle when there is a direct light going into the lens. So this is where you're going to have a matte box and really block out that sun. Otherwise, it'll probably wash out the image too much. But if this is the look you're going for, I mean, it's quite desirable for some people. Now, who exactly are these for? Now, like I said, you can use macro lenses and cine lenses all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go in close. It just gives you that ability to go in close. So if you do a lot of product videography, macro lenses are extremely useful and recommended for product photographers and videographers. And even if you do documentaries where you need to go in close on insects and animals really closely, these are going to do extremely well. So are these lenses worth it? I mean, yeah, of course. If you do need macro lenses, these are fantastic. And especially if you do need macro cine lenses, these are fantastic. There are plenty other autofocus options that you can get, you know, for your Sony Alpha cameras or Canon cameras, Red cameras, whatever. But obviously, because these are PL or EF mounts, cinematographers with, you know, PL mount or the EF mount will find these extremely useful. And yeah, I love these, and I'm definitely going to be using these more often. So thanks for watching, guys, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.